I'm ready. I'm ready. 27. John 7, 1 to 24. John 7, 1 to 24. Let's see. After this, Jesus stayed in Galilee, going from village to village. He wanted to stay out of Judah, where the Jewish leaders were plotting his death. But soon it was time for the festival of shelters, and Jesus' brothers urged him to go to Judah for the celebration. Go where your followers can see the miracles, they scoffed. You can't become a public figure if you hide like this. If you can do such wonderful things, prove it to the world. For even his brothers didn't believe in him. Jesus replied, now is not the right time for me to go, but you can go any time, and it will make no difference. The world can't hate you, but it does hate me because I accuse it of sin and evil. You go on and on. I'm not yet ready to go to this festival, because my time has not yet come. So Jesus remained in Galilee. But after his brothers had left for the festival, Jesus also went, though secretly, staying out of public view. The Jewish leaders tried to find him at the festival and kept asking if anyone had seen him. There was a lot of discussion about him among the crowds. Some said he was a wonderful man, while others said he's nothing but a fraud deceiving the people. But no one had the courage to speak favorably about him in public, for they were afraid of getting in trouble with the Jewish leaders. Then midway through the festival, Jesus went up to the temple and began to teach. The Jewish leaders were surprised when they heard him. How does he know so much when he hasn't studied anything we've studied? They've asked. So Jesus told them, I'm not teaching my own ideas, but those of God who sent me. Anyone who wants to do the will of God will know whether my teaching is from God or merely my own. Those who present their own ideas are looking for praise for themselves, but those who seek to honor the one who sent me, they are good and genuine. None of you obey the laws of Moses. In fact, you are trying to kill me. The crowd replied, you're demon-possessed. Who's trying to kill you? Jesus replied, I worked on the Sabbath by healing a man, and you were offended. But you work on the Sabbath too, when you obey the laws of Moses' circumcision. Actually, this tradition is older than the law of Moses, goes back to Abraham. For at the correct time for circumcising your son falls on the Sabbath, you go ahead and do it, so as not to break the laws of Moses. So why should I be condemned for making a man completely well on the Sabbath? Think this through, and you will see that I'm right. That was John 7, 1 to 24. Now 1 Chronicles 27 and 28. This is a list of the Israelite generals and captains and their officers who served the king by supervising the army divisions that were on duty each month of the year. Each division served for 1 month and had 24,000 troops. Joshabim, son of Zadiel, was the commander of the first division, which was on duty during the first month. There were 24,000 troops in his division. He was the descendant of Perez and was in charge of all the army officers for the first month. Doadai, a descendant of Oah, was commander of the second division, which was on duty during the second month. There were 24,000 in his troop. Miloth was his chief officers. Benani, son of Joadiah, was the priest commander of the third division, which was on duty during the third month. There were 24,000 troops in his division. This was the Benani who commanded David's elite military group known as the 30. And his son Amazbad was his chief officer. Ashiel, the brother of Joab, was commander of the 4th division, which was on duty during the 4th month. There were 24,000 troops in his division. Ashiel was succeeded by his son Zebediah. Shammah, the Israelite, was the commander of the 5th division, which was only on duty during the 5th month. There were 24,000 troops in his division. Ira, son of Ikesh, from Tokel, was commander in the 6th Division, which was on duty during the 6 months. There were 24,000 troops in his division. Helaz, a descendant of Ephraim, was from Pelon, was commander of the 7th Division, which was on duty during the 7th month. There were 24,000 troops in his division. Sibekiah, a descendant of Zerah, from Husha, was commander of the 8th Division, and which was on duty during the 8th month, where there were 24,000 troops in his division. Abazir from Ananoth, in the territory where Benjamin was the commander of the 9th Division, was on duty during the 9th month, where there were 24,000 troops in his division. Mirhah, a descendant of Zerah from Neathpal, was commander of the 10th Division, which was on duty during the 10th month. There were 24,000 troops in his division. Benani of Pirathon in Ephraim was the commander of the 11th Division, which was on duty during the 11th month, and there were 24,000 troops in his division. Helid, a descendant of Othniel from Neapal, was commander of the 12th Division, which was on duty during the 12th month. There were 24,000 troops in his division. The following were the tribes of Israel and their leaders: Reuben, Elazar and son of Zikri; Simeon, Sheleabath, son of Makkah; Levi, Hashabiah, son of Camille; Aaron, Zodok; Judah, Eliahu; Issachar, Omeri, son of Michael; Zebulun, Ishmael of Obadiah; Naphtali, Jeremiah, son of Azriel; Ephraim, Hosea, son of Uzziah; Manasseh, west; Joel, son of Pedaiah; Manasseh, east; Iddo, son of Zechariah; Benjamin, Jaziel, son of Abner; Dan, Azarel, son of Joram. These were the leaders of the tribes of Israel when David took his census. He did not count those who were younger than 20 of age, because the Lord had promised to make the Israelites as numerous as the stars in heaven. Joab began the census but never finished it, because the anger of God broke out against Israel. The final total was never recorded in King David's official records. Asmath, son of Adiel, was in charge of the palace treasuries. Jonan, son of Uzziah, was in charge of the religious treasuries throughout the towns, villages, and fortresses of Israel. Ezri, son of Kelub, was in charge of the field workers who farmed the king's land. Shimi from Ramah was in charge of the king's vineyards. Zabdi from Shephan was responsible for the grapes and the supplies of wine. Balaam from Geder was in charge of the king's olive groves and sycamore fig trees in the foothills of Judah. Joash was responsible for the supplies of olive oil. Shitra from Sharon was in charge of the cattle on the Sharon plain. Saphat was the son of Aldiah, was responsible for the cattle in the valleys. Obil the Ishmaelite was in charge of the camels. Jedediah from Menaroth was in charge of the donkeys. Jazi the Hagarite was in charge of the king's sheep. All of these officials were overseers of King David's property. Jonathan, David's uncle, was a wise counselor to the king, a man of great insight, and a scribe. Jahiel, the Hakamite, was responsible to teach the king's son. Ahithophel was the royal advisor. Hushai, the Archite, was the king's friend. Ahithophel was succeeded by Joadiah's son Benaniah and by Ahiabar. Joab was the commander of the Israelite army. David summoned all his officials to Jerusalem, the leaders of the tribes, the commanders of the 12 army divisions, the other generals and captains, the overseers of the royal property and the livestock, the palace officials, the mighty men, and all the warriors in the kingdom. David rose and stood before them and addressed them as follows: "My brothers and my people, It was my desire to build a temple where the ark of the Lord, the covenant, Lord's covenant, God's footstool could rest permanently. I made the necessary preparations for building it, but God said to me, "You must not build a temple to honor my name, for you are a warrior and have shed much blood. Yet the Lord, the God of Israel, has chosen me from among all my father's family to be king over Israel forever. For he has chosen the tribe of Judah to rule, and from among the families of Judah he chose my father's family. And from among my father's son the Lord was pleased to make me king over all of Israel. And from all among my sons the Lord has given me many children. He chose Solomon to succeed me on the throne of his kingdom of Israel. He said to me, 'Your son Solomon will build my temple and in its courtyards, for I have chosen him as my son, and I will be his father. And he continues to obey my commands and regulations as he does now. I will make this kingdom last forever.' So now the God as our witness, I give you this charge for all of Israel, the Lord's assembly. Be careful to obey all the commands of the Lord your God, so you may possess this good land and leave it to your children as a permanent inheritance. And Solomon, my son, will get to know the God of your ancestors. Worship him and serve him with your whole hearts and with a willing mind. For the Lord sees every heart and understands and knows every plan and thought. If you seek him, you will find him. But if you forsake him, he will reject you forever. So take this seriously. The Lord has chosen you to build a temple as a sanctuary. Be strong and do the work." Then David gave Solomon the plans for the temple and its surroundings, including the treasuries, the upstairs rooms and the inner rooms, and the inner sanctuaries where the ark's cover, the place of atonement, would be kept. David also gave Solomon all the plans he had in mind for the courtyards of the Lord's temple, the outside rooms, the treasuries of God's temples, and the rooms for the dedicated gifts. The king also gave Solomon instructions concerning the work of the various divisions of the priests and the Levites in the temple of the Lord. And he gave specifications for the items in the Lord's temple which were used for worship and sacrifice. David gave instructions regarding how much gold and silver should be used to make the necessary items. He told Solomon the amount of gold needed for the lampstands and lamps, and the amount of silver for the silver lampstands and lamps. Depending on how each would be used, he designated an amount of gold for a table on which the bread of the presence would be placed, and the amount of silver for the other tables. David also designated the amount of gold for the solid gold meat hooks used to handle the sacrificial meat for the basins, pincers, and dishes, as well as the amount of silver for every dish. Finally, he designated the amount of refined gold for the altar of incense and for the gold cherubim, whose wings were stretched out over the ark of the Lord's covenant. Every part of this plan, David told Solomon, was given to me in writing from the hand of the Lord. Then David continued, "Be strong and courageous and do the work. Don't be afraid or discouraged by the size of the task, for the Lord my God is with you. He will not fail you or forsake you. He will see to it that all the work related to the temple of the Lord is finished correctly. The various divisions of priests and Levites will serve in the temple of God. Others with skills of every kind will volunteer, and the leaders and the entire nation are at your command." That was Chronicles 27:28. Lastly, but not least, Zechariah 12. This message concerning the fate of Israel came from the Lord. This message is from the Lord, who stretched out the heavens, laid the foundations of the earth, and formed the spirit within humans. I will make Jerusalem and Judah like an intoxicating drink to all the nearby nations that send their armies to besiege Jerusalem. On that day I will make Jerusalem a heavy stone, a burden for the world. None of the nations who would try to lift it will escape unscathed. On that day, says the Lord, I will cause every horse to panic and every rider to lose his nerve. I will watch over the people of Judah, but I will blind the horses of her enemies. And the clans of Judah will say to themselves, the people of Jerusalem have found strength in the Lord Almighty, their God. On that day, I will make the clans of Judah like a brazier that sets a wood pile ablaze, or like a burning torch among sheaves of grain. They will burn up all the neighboring nations, right and left, while the people living in Jerusalem will remain secure. The Lord will give victory to the rest of Judah before Jerusalem, so that the people of Jerusalem and the royal line of David would not have greater honor than the rest of Judah. On that day, the Lord will defend the people of Jerusalem. The weakest among them will be as mighty as King David, and the royal descendants will be like God, like the angel of the Lord who goes before them. For my plan is to destroy all the nations that come against Jerusalem. Then I will pour out a spirit of grace and prayer on the family of David and all of the people of Jerusalem. They will look on me, whom they have pierced, and mourn for him as an only son. They will grieve bitterly for him, as for a firstborn son who has died. The sorrow and mourning in Jerusalem on that day will be like a grieving mourning of Hadad Rimmon in the valley of Megiddo. All of Israel will weep in profound sorrow, each family by itself, with the husbands and the wives in separate groups. The family of David will mourn along the family of Nathan, the family of Levi, the family of Shimei. Each of the surviving families from Judah will mourn separately, husbands and wives apart. Amen. Amen. Till tomorrow.